All right. What's up, everybody? LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm back. I'm Chris Muzan, your financial coach, financial therapist, here to have another business conversation with you on today's episode of BizBuzz Live. We're going to be breaking down the massive layoffs happening in 2024 and finding out, are you next? Is your industry next? Stick around. We're going to talk about it. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of BizBuzz Live. We're jumping on every single Wednesday at this time just to dive into the world of business, the world of entrepreneurship, the world of careers and jobs. Again, as a financial professional, there's so much that I get a chance to sit down with people and talk about. But the number one thing that really stands out and really is the topic of most people's financial life is their income and how they make more income and what their career is like and how they're getting their next job or how they're creating multiple streams of income, or if they're a business owner, how they're becoming a better business owner, how they're growing their revenue. So a lot of our financial life really stems from what we do for work and how we choose to make income. So that's why we started this, is so we can start talking about some of these career shifts, some of the navigations of our job life or our business life, and exactly what's happening out there in the landscape. Today, we're talking about some massive layoffs. I don't know if you guys have seen these articles or you have seen what's popped up. We're at the beginning of 2024, right? At recording this, right? We're 1 month into the year, basically. It's the end of January. But towards the end of last year and all of 2023, and now starting off this year, we're starting to see the job landscape shift a bunch. It's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things happening in these economies and in the economy and different industries. And what that does is it affects the employees, right? And affects the employers, people that hire people, but then it also affects the employees because of the shifting and changing landscape. So we got to get better, right? At the end of the day, if we want to improve our financial life or make sure we're financially stable or financially secure for our families, we got to be aware of what's happening out there. And so today is the conversation that we all need to talk about. You guys know, if you've been following me for any bit of time, right? I'm a big advocate for entrepreneurship. I'm a big advocate for being entrepreneur minded. You're right. Some people maybe aren't necessarily cut out to build a big business, but everyone is cut out to be more entrepreneurial, to think more about ownership. And having a job typically takes away ownership, right? Now you work for someone else and they dictate all types of things. They dictate your schedule, when you can see your family, when you can't see your family. They dictate the money that you make, when you make it. And in these types of times, when we're talking about layoffs, they dictate how you support your family. So I'll start by just saying, right, like just coming with the most amount of empathy to this conversation for anyone that's listening that has been laid off or that's going through a job transition, right? I understand how frustrating that is. I understand how demoralizing that could be when you give your life and your time to a company, and for them to turn around and say you no longer have a position here, you're no longer welcome here, your position is no longer needed here. I understand what that feels like. I can understand what that feels like. One of the reasons why my wife decided to come into entrepreneurship and be an entrepreneur is because she was laid off in her early 20s. In her early 20s, she got she got exposed to the negative side of corporate America, being in pharmaceutical sales, understanding that, things, good industries continue to shift and change. And just in her early 20s, she got laid off. She got laid off from a position. And, my wife is in the position where she said, you know what, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And so I'm going to choose to go off and create the skills that I need to make my own path. But there's so many of you out there that maybe have been laid off and don't take another option. You might be okay with having that happen again, even if you don't, it doesn't feel the greatest. If you don't make a different decision or create different skill sets, that very likely can happen again. My wife is one of those people that it happened early enough that she felt the effects. But man, my heart goes out to the people that are in their 50s or 60s. You might be listening to this and you get laid off, or you've just previously gotten laid off, or in the past few years you got laid off. Man, that's a tough place to be, where you've built a life on something and then all of a sudden it all comes tumbling and you don't have as much time. You don't have as much time to secure your retirement. You don't have much more time to create new skill sets and get into a different industry. But this is why ownership, entrepreneurship, entrepreneur mindedness is important. So we can never give anyone, no job, no company, no industry, that amount of control over our lives and our family's life. Today, that was just another example of all the things that are happening out there. And for some of you that don't know, I'm going to read off some things for you. This is an article that came from LinkedIn here, talking about the latest layoffs. Right. So this is a recent article. I'm gonna read a little bit of it to you. It says here, as the year begins, 85% of workers said that they feared being laid off this year. Man, 85% of workers said that they had a fear of being laid off in 2024. These concerns were born out of January, with job cuts accelerating to their highest clip since March of last year. Across the hard-hit tech and media sectors, the concentrated nature of the cuts makes the pain not just bigger, but deeper. So let's talk about some of these layoffs. Again, some of you might not know this stuff has been happening, but this is a wake-up call for if we want to make sure that our financial life is in the right place. We want to make sure that we are doing the things necessary to put our families in the best financial position possible. Then we need to be aware of this type of stuff. Here's just a few that we can look at. NASDAQ plans to cut hundreds of jobs as it begins integrating software from Adenza's into its business. So they're planning on cutting of hundreds of jobs. NASDAQ. TechCrunch has shut down its paid subscription product, has laid off 8 staff members. Block, which is Square, right? Block has begun laying off workers after announcing the cuts last year. The layoffs could affect up to 10% of the company of 13,000 employees. Up to 10%. That's 1,300 people could be affected by Block laying people off. PayPal is cutting 9% of its workforce. The layoffs will roughly affect 2,500 people. Wall Street Journal is restructuring its Washington bureau and laying off an unspecified number. So Wall Street Journal is not even telling you, but they're telling you, hey, we're doing some restructuring and we're going to lay off some people. American Airlines is laying off 656 customer service and baggage resolution employees. It's their attempt to streamline their customer support. It said it's going to affect 8.2% of the airline's customer support personnel. UPS, brand new article that just came out, is laying off 12,000 employees. 12,000 employees from UPS. And what does it due to? It says it's due to weak demand and higher union labor costs. Let's stop there just for a second. Let's just stop really quick and talk about the demands that have been put on these companies. I know if some of you out there listen to this and you hear this, you might have a propensity to blame the company. Hey, the CEO makes $20 million. You can't afford to pay your people. Hey, the company's revenues are up, or I see your name everywhere. You can't afford to pay your people. You have to start laying off people. But let's think about it from the employer standpoint. Some of us don't do this. Some of us have only known being an employee. Right? That's all we know. So you might not ever see it from a business owner perspective, or from a public, if you work for a publicly traded company, what that means. But people have other interests in the financial well-being of a company. The business of business is to stay in business. The business of business is to stay in business. Business does no one any good if it goes out of business. The two main costs, the two main drivers in expenses in any business is cost of goods, like whatever that company produces, whether it's, some type of technology and they need to, do the research and development or buy the computers or the chips or whatever it is, or if it's just somebody that has a mom and pop restaurant and you have to buy food and you have to buy drinks and you have to, right, actually buy your like the cost of the goods that you sell is one of the main drivers. And the second driver is labor. It's people. It's what you need to be able to operate. So those two main drivers, if you're thinking of this from a business perspective or as a business owner, right, those are two of the main drivers of businesses. So when business isn't doing well, those are the two things that people focus on. That the business owner, that the person running the leadership of the company, that's what they focus on. How do I lower my cost of goods, bring in different products, make cheaper products, outsource, those types of things? And then how do I cut my labor? Well, this is what makes it tough. The reason why I'm going to this, because UPS says the reason they're laying off 12,000 people is because unions are demanding more. So imagine that. Imagine the company is making less money because the demand is slower. Their cost of goods are probably still going up. And the labor unions, right? The people that fight for the people are saying, but we need more. We need more time off. We need better healthcare. We need more money. We need higher pay. Well, those two things don't go hand in hand. They're not going to work out. And over time, who's going to lose? The employees. The employees lose because the business of business is to stay in business. If I keep paying our staff more and we're making less money, eventually no one will have a job because we're going to be out of business. And again, I hear it already. I hear you saying you could pay the leadership less. You could pay the CEO less money. You could pay the, right, the C-suite less money. You could. But they're in leadership for a reason. Leadership is the highest paid position in the world. You show me anything great, I'll show you a great leader that's behind it. They almost deserve the amount that it takes to run that organization. Not saying that an employee doesn't deserve their $15 an hour, or their $17 an hour, their $22 an hour. They deserve that for the job that they do. However, if you keep making demands and you keep wanting more and the companies make less, it's the quickest way to be out of a job. We're clearly watching this happen with UPS. It's going to happen with many other companies too, but this is just one of them. UPS said, again, laying off 12,000 employees because of weak demand and higher union costs. Let's keep going. Freight forward Flexport is cutting 20% of its workforce this year. That's about 500 more employees. Warehouse logistics firm Flex laid off 99 people this month, which is 38% of its staff. Imagine, 4 out of every 10 people at the company get laid off as being a logistics firm. It said last September, that same firm laid off 131 workers. So they're cutting left and right. They might not even have anybody left after a while. Uber Freight let go of 1% of its workforce as it focused on growth mode. Roomba, who makes iRobot, laying off 350 people, which is around 31% of its staff. Microsoft laid off 1,900 people in Activision. That's like the Xbox and video gaming side of things. They laid off 1,900 people. It's about 8% of their gaming division. I thought gaming was getting bigger, right? I thought gaming was one of those things that is growing. Streaming is growing. Why are they laying off people? Well, it's because the business of business is to stay in business. The math might not be mathing. People might not be able to make all the money that they want to, so they're going to identify their two drivers in business: labor, cost of goods. Labor is people, and that's why we're seeing these layoffs. There's only so much a company can do. Jamf, it's an Apple device management software company, laying off 6% of its full-time employees. REI is laying off 357 workers this week in areas like headquarters and distribution centers. Headquarters, and distribution centers. So these are people at the corporate office that are losing their job. This isn't just the 9 to 5 worker. This isn't just the hourly employee. These are people at headquarters. These are major positions that they're figuring out we no longer need, whether it's because business is slowing down or whether we just can't afford it anymore. Salesforce is laying off 700 people. Last year, Salesforce cut 8,000 jobs from its 70,000 person workforce. So they're laying off another 700 people after last year it cut 8,000. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, I'm giving you this as insight so you can see what's happening out here in the industry. You might be in the tech industry, you might be in a different industry, but all tech, media, all these industries are being affected right now by whatever is happening in the economy, by whatever is happening in these industries. And again, the first place and maybe the second place to attack is labor. We just have to know this. We have to understand what's happening. Right, wrong, indifferent. It doesn't matter whether you believe it's right or wrong. If you believe it's wrong, I'm going to give you some solutions. Right? We'll talk about it. I'll give you some solutions if you think this is wrong. If you know it's the right thing and you can understand it, then how do you put yourself in a position to not let this happen to you? That becomes the question. Because at the end of the day, we have to take care of our own personal financial life. You have a responsibility to yourself and your family to do the right things financially to bring in income in the ways you need to support yourself and your lifestyle. This is just showing how companies at the drop of a dime could change all of it. Levi Strauss is cutting up to 15% of its corporate workforce amid disappointing profit forecasts. Again, these are not your hourly workers in a Levi's store. This is corporate workforce. These are managers. These are mid-level managers. These are assistants. These are people that are actually at the corporate office. So again, the message is, how do you shield yourself from this stuff? Paramount CEO said the company will reduce its workforce by an unspecified amount in order to manage costs. What'd I say, right? To manage costs. This is why they do it. In corporate America, you're a number. You're a number on the labor number. If I need to change the labor number, yes, again, we know there's a person attached to it, but not every business can look at it that way. Business Insider is cutting 8% of its workforce to refocus. That's what it said, according to an email. Time Magazine laid off 15% of its editorial staff, which is roughly 30 people across all departments like editorial, technology, and sales. That's Time Magazine. Could it be because no one's reading Time Magazine anymore? Could that be why they have to lay off 15% of its editorial staff? Is it because AI comes into play and now they don't need an editor because they can do the exact same work with a AI software? We knew this type of stuff would start coming down the pike. Again, how much are you paying attention to it? German software company SAP is laying off 8,000 jobs as a part of restructuring. They actually just employed 108,000 people at the end of 2023. But now they're like, that was a lot. We can't do 108,000. We just need 100,000. So that extra 8,000's got to go. There's a person and a family attached to that, which is tough. eBay is laying off 1,000 workers, which is 9% of its full-time employees, reducing its contractors to save money. I told you this is about money, saving money. Used car company Vroom is laying off 800 workers, or 90% of its workforce, and it's shutting down its e-commerce operations. 90% of 9 out of every 10 people that work at that company Vroom are out. They're out. Los Angeles Times is reducing its newsroom by 20%, or about 100 positions. Design firm laying off right after buyout. They're laying off people. Fintech firm Brex is laying off 20% of its workforce. TikTok cut 60 jobs, primarily in advertising and sales, right? They don't need more help advertising. They don't need more people selling. probably because they're either having AI or something doing it, or it's not growing as much as they wanted to. Riot Games, again, in the gaming space, laid off 11% of its global staff. That's 530 people. X laying off about another 100 employees. Google has eliminated over 1,000 jobs in ad sales and device service division. Here's a big one. Some of y'all might have heard this one, and this one is shocking. Sports Illustrated, you know the magazine. Sports Illustrated publisher, the Arena Group, has laid off the magazine's entire staff. Ladies and gentlemen, again, let's talk about this. Imagine showing up to work for a company you think is good. I mean, man, you think Sports Illustrated has a name. They've been in the industry for some time. They got, right? People know about Sports Illustrated. And you walk in and they say, hey, our parent company said everybody's gone. Like everybody's done. How crazy is that? It's wild, but it's happening to people left and right. Finish this up just so you can see the vastness of the people that are cutting jobs here. Wayfair is reducing its total global workforce by 13%. That's 1,650 jobs. Macy's is closing 5 stores and eliminating another 2,350 jobs. Pitchfork staffers, the publisher said in late 23 it would lay off some 300 employees. Bayer AG is cutting some manager jobs over the next year. Apple is shutting down its AI operations team, and all 121 employees are going to be asked to relocate within the company or risk termination. Universal Music Group laying off hundreds of jobs this year. They're in the music side of things. Company has 10,000 workers. Citigroup is eliminating 20,000 jobs in the financial space. Citigroup, 20,000 jobs gone, just like that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a major issue and something to pay attention to. It's something to pay attention to in your industry. These industries that we named, some of them you heard, some retail, some in music, some in other forms of entertainment like gaming. Some of them are in media, Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated. A lot of them are in the tech space. Those of you that have been in the tech space know last year the tech space got killed. Tons of people getting laid off. I bring this to your attention as a financial professional, saying it's your job to make sure you have the skills and the skill set to make sure your family and yourself are in a good financial position moving forward. One of the best and safest ways to do that is to become more entrepreneurial. Get some skill sets in a few areas. Get a skill set around sales. Some of us have such a negative terminology or a negative mindset when it comes to sales. Sales is influence, ladies and gentlemen. That's all it is. It's not like used car salesman type or some salesperson that just keeps bugging you, door knocking, right? That's not sales. Sales is influence. It's how do I get you to do the right thing for yourself? Sure, there's bad salespeople, just like there's bad everything out there. There's good and bad. But if you want a skill set that will take you far in life, that will allow you to never have to depend on another job, another person to be able to fund your lifestyle, you have to learn how to influence. You have to learn how to have a vision, care about something, and get other people to care about it as well. That's what sales is. You can pick an industry that you want to be in, but for those of you that are parents, guess what? You sell your children every day on why eating broccoli is better than eating candy. That's sales. You're influencing them to do what's right for them. What's your benefit? You get to raise a healthy child that becomes an adult and a functioning part of society. So that's important to you as a parent. So therefore, you choose to act to influence them in the proper ways. This is a skill set that if you want to not have this be you, I just went through a list of 30 plus companies that are laying off hundreds, if not thousands of people. If you don't want that to be you, you've got to create better skill sets. Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. If you get laid off, or you've been laid off, or you've had a scare of being laid off, and you think going to a different job over time will protect you, insanity. Again, not talking against having a job. It's okay, but it's not okay when you get put in this position where just because you're a number on their P&L, your family's livelihood is put in jeopardy. That's not okay. And again, as a financial professional, somebody that cares about the people I sit down with and their financial life, I'm always going to encourage them down the path of creating new skill sets. Even if you have a job right now that you think, you know what, I won't ever get fired. One, don't believe that, right? Don't believe it, because the older you get, the higher up that ladder that you climb, the worse it is. I'll give you a quick story. I had a good business partner who turned into a really good friend and mentor of mine a while back. And we met in business. So we're both in the path of entrepreneurship, but he came from a background of corporate, right? Corporate America, pretty high up, VP, director life in the consumer goods space. Right. And so he was, the VP of sales or the VP of marketing. And he had all these prestigious positions and he's making a few $100,000 a year and he has all the perks and he gets to go to the Super Bowl and he gets to go to, all the great sporting events. But when I met him, he had quit. He had left that life behind. And so I was always curious when I talked to him, like, man, why did you quit that life? Like, to most people growing up where I grow up, or right, a lot of you that might be listening, you get a nice corporate position that pays you $300,000, $400,000 a year salary, and you get a bunch of perks and you get extra vacation time and you get to go to all the places you want and a company car and all the stuff. Most people don't quit that life, right? Most people don't leave that. And he, again, gave me a lesson. And again, as I'm telling you this, I can realize that I'm blessed. My wife and I are blessed because we've gotten these lessons earlier in life than many people. We're in our mid-20s when we're getting these life lessons about career and job and industry and all those things. And some people may not get those until, who knows, right? You may not get that information until 40s or 50s. But regardless, we got some information, and some of the information that he gave us, when I sat down and had this conversation with him, and I said, hey man, like, why would you leave that? Like, why would you leave that lifestyle? He said, Chris, understand something. I was always responsible. I was always in the position where I was responsible for every, year, maybe twice a year, sitting across the desk with some other employee where I was in charge of giving them either a 2% raise, a 3% raise, or firing them, demoting them, changing their responsibilities. I was always in that position. And I was blessed to be in that position to be able to do that. And he said, but one day I realized that one day it was going to be my turn. And I was going to be sitting on the other side of that table. And someone was going to now be in control of my raise or me getting fired or getting demoted. And I realized that the higher up I climbed on that ladder, because again, we all climb the corporate ladder, right? The proverbial corporate ladder. The higher up I climbed on that ladder, the more I had a target on my back. The more I asked for more compensation, the more I said I deserve to make the extra bonus, the more I fought for more for me and my family, I realized I had a target on my back. And at a certain point in time, I'd be on the other side of that table. Why? Because now I make a bunch, and they could bring on somebody that makes half of what I make, that's willing to do the work. They're probably a little bit younger than I am. And my family's now in jeopardy. No matter how much I've built, no matter how much I've done for that company, I could be on the chopping block. He told me this and I was in my mid-20s, and it scared me. It honestly was like, yeah, imagine being 52 and building your life on something like that and climbing the ladder and someone just taking the rug from under you just because you make too much, just because now that lever that they can pull for labor, you're on the chopping block. Your 300,000 and your benefits and your car. There's a guy coming up that says, I'll take half of that. Just pay me 150, just pay me 175 and I'll do more of that work. Company's going to say, yeah. He was like, I've been in that position. I didn't want to put my family in that position moving forward. So I chose to leave. And he chose to leave and he chose to start business him and his wife, they were successful in that. Why? Because they created skill sets, they had connections, they had a network, they knew how to communicate to people. And so they would be fine on their own. Of course, there's ups and downs, but here's a myth in entrepreneurship is that entrepreneurship is riskier than having a job. I'll tell you the opposite. Being an entrepreneur and building a business, going after your goals and dreams, using your skill set is not riskier than actually having a job. It's more safe and secure, in all honesty, specifically because you're betting on yourself. If you believe in yourself, if you believe in your abilities, if you believe in your ability to grow, you might not have all the skill sets right now. You might not have all of the resources right now, but do you believe that you can acquire them? Do you believe that you can build a new network of people, that you can get around the people that can help you grow, that you can take in information that will allow you the skill sets to build something? If you believe in yourself and you believe that you are resourceful, then the safest and securest thing you can have is to build a business. It's to bet on yourself. The riskiest thing you could have is to give your life and your time to a company that looks at you as a number on the P&L. So anytime their business isn't doing well, or anytime the economy shifts, your family's livelihood is put in jeopardy. That, my friends, is ultimate risk. That is the riskiest. So after hearing all these types of things, again, my goal and my mission is to help you understand that having a job, while it's paying the bills now and may give you some level of security right now, long term, we have to build skill sets and put ourselves in positions to be able to bring in additional income outside of whatever that job does. So we're not caught off guard like the tens of thousands of people that are about to be laid off that we just talked about. Just showed you examples of all different industries that are laying off people. That could be you. That could be you next. How do we avoid it? How do we stop it? It's by getting better skill sets. It's by learning new things and having new conversations. I know it's scary. I know it's inconvenient. I know you don't want to think that this can happen to you. But if your family's safety and security financially is important, then you have to put this as part of your financial equation. You got to put it as a part of your financial equation. If you are solely dependent on one source of income, being a job, you're too close to zero. And we're watching this happen real time. Real time. We're at the beginning of 2024, y'all, and it's already happening. So I want you to protect yourself. I want you to now start to get the education. These are the solutions. These are the solutions. You got to get some information. You got to get some education. It might be going back to school. It might not be. It might just be figuring out what are your talents? What are your skills? What are your abilities? I've given this to other people. But I guess it would be fitting for this conversation, right? Kind of 4 things you want to think about if you're brainstorming some of this stuff. You're brainstorming, okay, what's my next move? I might not feel the most secure at my job. Again, that article said 85% of workers believe they could get laid off this year. So there's only 15% of people that don't believe they could get laid off. So 85% of people believe they could. So here's what you got to start thinking about. 4 areas. You got to start thinking about. Number 1, what are you good at? Like, what are you good at? What is the skill set that you have? Do people like you? If you don't know what you're good at, ask the 5 people closest to you. Say, hey, tell me what I'm good at. Be brutally honest. Just tell me, like, what do you think I'm really good at, or I do well, or I excel in? Okay. Like, that's the first place to start. What are you good at? Okay. Second thing, what do you like doing? Some people get this confused when you're brainstorming and thinking about your next thing. You're thinking about what I like doing and what I'm good at. Normally go hand in hand, but those things are different. You might like some things that you're not good at yet. Typically, most people that are good at stuff, they like it, but there's a lot of athletes that are really good at playing their sport, but they don't really like it. That's not really a career. Like, they found a way to make money doing it. So you really have to start to differentiate. What am I good at? But what do I like doing? Like, if time and money weren't an option, what would I like doing? Normally that's going to come in some form of service, just so you know. It's not going to be laying on the beach all day, guys, even though some of you might like that a bunch, right? But either way, maybe you can make that a lifestyle. Maybe you create some type of yacht company or something. I don't know. But either way, What do you like doing? That's the second thing to think about. Third thing to think about is, what does the world need? Like, what does your community need? What's what we call in business the white space? What's like the opening that nobody's really in that lane, but you see, like, this is a problem. Like, no one's really attacking that problem. You know, my wife loves watching Shark Tank for those types of things, and we all probably like watching shows like that, because it's like, man, why didn't I think of that? That is a need. Like, I do have that same small problem. If I just thought of that little gadget, it would be great. But that's why those products can be successful. What's the white space? What does the world need? What's missing in our community? What's missing in your life that you could, fill that void? The best businesses solve the biggest needs. And the last thing is, what makes money? What makes money? You got to know what makes money. You want to put yourself in a position financially to support your family, then you got to know what makes money. You got to know, like, what is it that I have that actually, or what out there in the world actually brings in revenue? Because there's some things that might be a great idea, but they don't make any money. I would always tell people that are getting started in business or thinking about their next business, does your business have the horsepower to get you to where you want to go? I know you might like jewelry. I know you might like, antiques. I'm not sure, right? You might like some little things, but how much can you really get from that? How many do you have to sell? Back in the day, I don't know if she's watching. If she is, right, shout out to her. I interviewed a lady, Southern California, that had a dog treat business. She had a dog treat business, but she had a storefront, right? So she had a brick and mortar storefront that she paid rent on, right? And my number one question when I asked her was like, well, how many dog treats do you need to sell just to make rent? Like, forget making a profit and your overhead and all this stuff, because she was the one working in the store. Forget cost of goods. Like, how many dog treats do you need to sell just to make rent? Just to like pay for the building and the lights and the space that you're in. Because if the average dog treat was going for $1.50, you have to sell thousands of dog treats just to be able to make rent. So when you start thinking about like what makes money, yeah, you might like dogs and you might think dogs need treats. But is that sustainable? Like, can you make a few $1,000s a month over top of your expenses with that business? Maybe not. So your business has to have the horsepower to get you to where you got to go. Those are the 4 things you got to think about. If this conversation intrigued you, or this conversation sparked something in your mind, like, man, I don't want to put my family or myself in a position where potentially I could get the rug pulled out from under me. No matter how tenured I am, no matter how much the union is fighting for us, because again, those of you that have union jobs, we just saw UPS is laying 12,000 workers off because unions are fighting and demanding too much. So that might not be in your best interest if they keep fighting for more, and y'all going to start to stand off against the companies. You're going to lose that battle. So if you're now thinking about this stuff, like, how do I insulate myself? Like, how do I make sure this doesn't affect me? I just gave you some things. You got to get some new skill sets. You got to think more entrepreneurially, meaning more about ownership and what you can bring to the table, and think of those 4 things. What am I good at? What do I like doing? What is needed out there in society? And what makes money? If you can think of those 4 things, somewhere in the intersection of that, you'll find exactly what you're designed to do. And then you have to go execute and do it. And that's a whole different show, ladies and gentlemen, a whole different show. The idea is one thing, but the execution is the real tough part when you jump into a brand new endeavor. But it's possible. You're capable of doing it. You can make it happen. Do me a favor, drop some comments if you like today's topic, or you got anything to add to today's topic around layoffs. If you've been laid off, man, I'm curious to hear your experience, and I'm curious what you went to do next. Did you just go to the next industry? Did you just find another job? Did you try to supplement? Did you try to start a business? If this is a topic that maybe you've never even thought about, like you never thought you could get laid off, or you work for the government, you never thought the government could get shut down, or your department could go without funding. Maybe this is time to say, hey, like, what is it that I should do? If you need some ideas, feel free to reach out. I'm here on LinkedIn. Again, this is where you guys are seeing this. But again, also over on YouTube. And again, you can follow me on any of the other platforms that are out there, and reach out. Send me a message. Let me know. What are your thoughts? If you have any fears around this type of stuff, well, let's figure out how to make it work. Let's figure out what skill sets you need to acquire in order to get better. And like I said, it could come by going back to school, but it could not. Not a big advocate for school either, because all the information we need is out there. You just have to be clear on what you want to do, on what you're good at, on what you like doing, on what the world needs, and on what actually makes money. If you follow those things, I promise you it'll get you to a better spot, so these layoffs won't ever affect you or your children moving forward. All right, y'all, another BizBuzz live this Wednesday. Catch us every single Wednesday here. We're talking about entrepreneurship, career, industry, all the stuff that's happening out there. Want to hear your conversations. I would love to have some engagement with some of you that are checking this out. Talk to me about what's on your mind when it comes to certain careers, certain jobs, and how you're going to make sure you and your family are secure financially. So until next time, y'all, peace. Take care.